While everyone has been losing their minds over the past couple of weeks with Claude Opus 4.7, GPT 5.5, and Gemini 3.1 Pro, and yes, I will break down all three in this video, none of that is the actual decision you should be making for your business this month. Now, the thing is that the smartest AI tool in the world is worth $0 to your business if your team won't touch it. And right now, 8 out of 10 white collar workers are quietly refusing the AI that their boss just bought them. Not because they don't understand it, because around 67% of them say, hey, I understand the tool just fine. They simply do not want to use it. So, in this video, I am going to walk you through three things that all hit at the same time this month. These are three stories that most people are treating as separate, but they're not. They're one story, and once you see how they connect, the way you make this decision changes. So, let me set the stage real quick. In the last couple weeks, we've had Anthropic launching Claude Opus 4.7 on April 16th, which is their best model ever. It hits AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, and Microsoft Foundry on day one. And on April 22nd, we had two big launches on the same day. Microsoft pushed Copilot Agent Mode, generally available inside Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and then Google announced Workspace Studio at Cloud Next, which lets normal people build their own AI agents inside Gmail and Sheets without writing any code. Then, April 23rd, OpenAI shipped GPT 5.5, nicknamed Spud, and it's the first fully retrained base model that they've put out since GPT 4.5. We had 5 major launches in 7 days. Now, every AI YouTuber I follow is doing the which model is best videos right now, and look, those videos are useful, and I will be breaking that down later. But what I'm going to do is tell you exactly which model fits which kind of business in just a few minutes. But there is something really interesting that I wanted to highlight because underneath all of the recent noise of the model releases, Menlo Ventures dropped a report that almost nobody's talking about for the regular business audience. They tracked actual enterprise AI spend, what real companies are paying real money for, and the numbers are pretty insane. Anthropic now has 40% of enterprise AI spend, and OpenAI fell from 50% in 2023 to 27% today. They lost almost half of their enterprise share in 2 years. And then Google jumped to 21%. So the market quietly has had a little bit of an earthquake there. And story number 2 is that the brand that you defaulted to back in 2023, which for most people is ChatGPT, is not the brand that people are building real AI workflows with anymore. This is not the ones that people are paying for. And then story 3, and this is the one that's going to land the hardest, is at the same time that all this is happening, WalkMe, their digital adoption company, published their 2026 report, and they surveyed 3,750 executives and employees across 14 countries. The headline here is that 80% of white-collar workers are actively or passively rejecting the AI their company is rolling out. 54% finished tasks manually in the last 30 days, bypassing the company tool on purpose. And the one that should keep every founder up at night is that 44% of Gen Z workers admit that they have sabotaged their company's AI rollout. Sabotaged on purpose. Things like feeding in bad inputs to make the AI look broken or skewing performance reviews to undercut whoever's using it. So if you are running a business or managing a team or just trying to figure out which AI tool to actually pay for this quarter, you are standing right at the intersection of 3 different stories that all happened in the same month. The market shifted, the tools changed, and the people who are supposed to actually use them are quietly rebelling. So in this video, I'm going to lay out for you what actually changed about which model to pick, because the answer is different than it was even 6 months ago. Then I'll show you why the enterprise voted the way that they did, and what that signal means for your business. And then most importantly, I'm going to show you what the data says actually works when you roll AI out to a team. Because I'll tell you right now, most of what people are recommending out there is wrong, and the research backs that up. Let's get into it. So before we get into which model you should be paying for, I need to spend a few minutes on what just happened in the enterprise market, because this is the signal that should be informing your decision, not all the benchmark drama on Twitter. So I mentioned the Menlo's venture report. Now, these guys are venture capitalists who track real spending data from real companies. They're not surveys, they're not vibes, they are actual dollars going out the door. Their latest numbers say that enterprises are spending $8.4 billion a year on LLM API access alone. And total enterprise AI investment last year was $37 billion, and that's 3 times what it was the year before. Now, 3 years ago in 2023, OpenAI had 50% of all enterprise LLM spend. That's about half of it. Now they only have about 27%. They lost almost half their enterprise market share in about 2 years. Now, Anthropic, the people behind Claude, they've went from 12% to 40%. They've more than tripled. Then Google quietly went from around 7% to about 21%, also nearly tripled. So together, these three providers now account for 88% of enterprise model usage. So the question is, why? Why did the most well-known consumer AI brand in the world lose half of its enterprise share to two competitors most people on the street still don't know by name? Well, the simple answer is coding, because that's the engine. Anthropic has 54% of all enterprise coding spend, and OpenAI has 21%. And part that's pretty wild is that 6 months ago, Anthropic was at 42%. They jumped 12 points in 6 months. Now, Claude Code, which is Anthropic's terminal based coding agent, has eaten the enterprise developer market alive. Every major dev tool like Cursor, Replit, Bolt, Lovable, and even GitHub's Copilot Premium tier are all routing requests to Claude under the hood for the hard stuff. Anthropic has been on top of the coding leaderboards for 18 straight months, going back to Claude Sonnet 3.5 in June of 2024. Now, I hear some of you thinking, Hank, I don't run a software company. I sell HVAC services or I run a marketing agency. Why does it matter who's winning at coding? Well, stay with me on this because it does matter way more than it sounds. So, coding is the most measurable, most agentic, and most multi step task you can throw at AI. It is where the rubber meets the road. When a model wins coding, what it's really winning is the ability to follow a complex task across many steps, using tools and recovering from mistakes, and then being able to finish the task itself. And that is the same skill you need for AI to do anything useful in your business. Drafting a proposal that pulls data from your CRM, building a financial model from your QuickBooks export, or triaging customer support tickets and routing them to the right person. Maybe it's reading through 50 job applicants and shortlisting the top ones with reasoning for each. These are all multi-step agentic tasks. So the model that's winning coding is, by kind of an accident, the model that's winning agents. So the practical translation is that brand loyalty in AI is a tax. If you defaulted to ChatGPT back in 2023 because that's the brand you had heard of, and you had not reevaluated since, you have been paying that task. Maybe it's fine for what you do, maybe it's not, but the people who are building real production grade AI workflows have moved off of the ChatGPT only setup for a reason. The smart money is now running what's called a multi-model stack. Claude for the hard agentic stuff, GPT for general productivity and content, and then Gemini when they need long context or they're already inside Google Workspace. Now, that does not mean that you need to switch overnight. It just means the answer to which AI model should I pay for is no longer the one with the famous logo. The question changed underneath you. And in a minute, I'm going to give you a one-screen matrix that tells you exactly which model fits which kind of business. All right, I think it's about time to answer the question. Which one of these three should you pay for? And I'm not going to do another benchmark recap video because there are about 40 of those, up to 1,000 of those out there this week already, and most of them are useless if you don't write code for a living. Let me start with what each model is genuinely good at right now, and then we can go on from there. Claude Opus 4.7 is Anthropic's flagship that dropped on April 16th. The headline for you here is that it is the best model in the world right now at multi-step agentic work. On a benchmark called Cursor Bench, which tests real coding tasks inside an IDE, it jumps 12 full points over the previous version in one release, 78% versus 58%. Now, that's a massive jump for one model release, and it also has the best tool use of any model on the market. It scores around 79% on something called the MCP Atlas, which basically means it's the best at using software the way you would, clicking through menus, calling APIs, reading screens, and figuring out what to do next. It also got high resolution vision for the first time, so you can drop in a screenshot of a contract or a chart and it'll be able to read it accurately. For a business owner, this translates into, hey, if you're using AI to do anything that takes more than 2 steps in a row, pulling data from one system, summarizing it, drafting an email about it, and then saving it somewhere else, Claude is the one that you want. It is also the best for things like finance work, proposal generation, or for any kind of legal or contract review where the document is long and dense. Now, the price is about $5 per million input tokens or $25 per million output. So it's same as the previous version. Now, where Claude is not as good, and I want to be honest about this, is in creative writing and conversational tone. The new version is a bit more structured and more table-y, And if you're using AI to ghostwrite blog posts, the tone has regressed even a little bit, so that's worth knowing. The next one we have here is GPT 5.5. Now, this is OpenAI's released from April 23rd. Now, it is a bigger deal than most people realize because it's the first fully retrained base model that has been shipped since GPT 4.5. The previous releases, 5.1 through 5.4, were incremental tunings. Now, the one thing here that you should care about most is that it is genuinely a lot faster. It has the same per token speed as 5.4, but at a much higher level of intelligence. It's also natively omnimodal, which means voice, image, and video are all built into one model now. They're not stitched together from separate pieces. On a recent benchmark called GDP-Val, which tests AI doing the work of 44 different professional jobs, it scored almost 85%. Now, that is the best knowledge work generalist score we have ever seen on any model. So, if your business runs primarily on Microsoft 365, like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, things of that nature, GPT 5.5 is the natural pick here because it does power Copilot currently, even though they're starting to separate ways. And then Copilot's agent mode just went generally available on April 22nd at no extra license cost beyond the $30 per user subscription you may already be paying. And if you're doing a lot of content creation, social posts, marketing, all that fun stuff, GPT 5.5 is the one to go for. And if you're a knowledge worker who lives in 1,000 different documents and meetings, it's likely GPT 5.5 as well. Now, pricing is 5 and 30 million per token, which is slightly more expensive on the output side than Claude. Then lastly, we have Gemini 3.1 Pro. Now, this one has been out since February, and most people are still sleeping on it. Now, there are three things to know. One, it's the cheapest of the three by a long shot. $2 per million input tokens and 12 per million output. That is 7.5 times cheaper than GPT 5.5. Now, two, it has the longest usable context window of the bunch. You can drop in a 900-page PDF, 8 hours of audio recordings, or a full hour of video, and it will process all of it in one shot. And three, it's the most deeply integrated AI in any productivity suite. If you live in Gmail, Docs, and just the Google suite, Gemini is right there in every single app. So it's the one for you there. Now, the downside here is that it can be a little bit slow to start a response, taking up to about 30 seconds on some requests, which makes it less great for snappy chat style usage. And it does take a little bit more setup to get going, but for cost sensitive teams running long document workflows, things of that nature, this is a steal. With all that being said, let's picture two different business owners sitting at a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning. Both of them want to roll out AI to their team. Now, the first one, let's call her Rachel, runs a 10-person marketing agency. Everybody lives in Google Docs and Sheets, and they write a lot of content and they do deep research on client industries. Now, the right answer for Rachel is Gemini 3.1 Pro. It's built into workspace tools her team already uses, it's the cheapest by far, and the long context handles the deep client research without breaking the sweat. Now, the second one, let's call him Mike, runs a 25-person logistics company. He needs to automate quote generation, invoice processing, and triage of incoming customer emails. Now, that's all multi-step stuff, and the right answer for Mike is Claude Opus 4.7. The agentic capability is non-negotiable for that kind of workflow, and Claude is just better at it right now. Now we can flip it. Same Rachel, but she's a Microsoft shop. Runs everything through Outlook and Excel. Now, GPT-5 would be your solution there. Let's say it's the same Mike, but he's already on Microsoft 365. Well, probably with GPT 5.5 as the primary with a Claude API subscription on the side for the heavy agent work. Now, the big shift here, and the one I want to make sure you hear, is that you don't need to be loyal to one AI tool. The era of we are a ChatGPT company or we are a Claude company is over. Most of the successful operators that I'm working with on a daily basis are running usually two different models. A primary tool that lives with where their team already works, plus one specialist that can reach for when the primary chokes. ChatGPT plus Claude, Gemini plus Claude, whatever fits for you. So that's how you pick. Match the model to your stack and your work, not to whichever logo you saw first. But here's the thing, and this is where most of the YouTube videos are going to stop and not talk about, is that you can pick the perfect model. You can write the check. You can run the rollout meeting, and it can still completely fail in your business because the model is not actually the bottleneck. Look, I read a lot of AI business content, and almost everyone covering this stuff treats the model decision as the hard part. Pick the right tool, write the check, and you're done, and then that's the whole story. Well, the data says that that is wrong. The data says that picking the model is actually the easy part. The hard part is the part that is actively breaking businesses right now, is what happens when you try to get your team to use it. From a recent WalkMe report, about 80% of white collar workers are actively or passively rejecting AI that their company has rolled out. That breaks into two groups. About 54% of them, more than half, finished tasks manually in the last 30 days on purpose, even though their company had paid for an AI tool that could do it for them. The remaining 26% are the passive resistors. They're using it begrudgingly, minimally, or only when forced to. And here's the gap that I think explains most of this. There is a 52-point trust gap between executives and workers on whether AI can be trusted to do business critical work. 61% of executives say yes, and then 9% of workers say yes. That's 9%. The C-suite and the desk are not in the same conversation about this technology, and they're not even close. Now, the reflexive take here is, oh, workers just don't understand the technology yet, or we need more training. Well, that is not what the data says. The SHRM 2026 Workforce Technology Survey found that 67% of resistant workers report fully understanding the AI tools that they're being asked to use. They're not confused, they get it. They just are rejecting it anyways. So why? Well, the research breaks down resistance into 5 real reasons, and none of them are about skill. Number 1 is skill devaluation fear. Well, if AI does what I'm good at, what am I worth? 2 is professional identity displacement. Well, I'm a writer or an analyst or a manager. Is AI going to do my job, meaning that I'm not doing that anymore? Then 3 is domain accuracy distrust. Well, I've watched it hallucinate in my field. I cannot trust it on the things that matter. 4 is unfair productivity expectations. Well, every 2 hours AI saves me, my boss adds 4 hours of new work. And then 5, there's no consent in workflow redesign. Nobody asked me how I want work done before they redesign my job. Now, I want you to sit with number 5 for a second, because in my experience, that's the one that hurts the most when you talk to employees. The number one complaint I hear from people who've been through an AI rollout is they didn't ask us. Leadership picked a tool, signed a contract, sent an all hands email, and then expected applause. And the people who do the work, the ones whose jobs are getting redesigned, get really no input at all. And of course, they're resisting because you would resist as well. Now, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into something a bit darker. Now, there was a survey of 2,400 knowledge workers across the US, UK, and Europe. And then 29% of all employees admitted to actively sabotaging their company's AI rollout. On top of that, 44% of Gen Z workers admitted to doing the same. And what does that sabotage look like? Well, it could be things like deliberately feeding bad inputs to make the AI produce garbage, so leadership thinks the tool is broken. Could be entering proprietary data into public AI tools, so IT has to lock the rollout down. Or it could be skewing performance reviews against teammates who use AI, and sometimes just plain refusing. Now, about 30% of these saboteurs cited fear AI will take my job as their main reason. And the kicker is that 60% of executives in that same survey said that they are considering cutting employees who refuse to adopt AI. So you've got workers sabotaging because they're afraid of being fired, and executives planning to fire them because they're sabotaging. This is not a productive cycle. Now, it's not that workers don't want to use AI, because they do. They just don't want to use the company's AI on the company's terms. Now, there is something the security industry calls shadow AI. That is, employees using AI tools that IT has not approved. Now, the data is staggering here. About 73% of organizations have detected unauthorized AI use in their networks. I would say that's a lot higher than that, I'll be honest. And the average employee uses 3.2 AI tools that are outside official channels. There was even an MIT study that found that 90% of companies have employees using personal chatbot accounts daily. But only 40% of those companies even have an official AI subscription. And 38% of employees have admitted to sharing confidential company data with personal AI accounts that have no security agreement, no data protection, no contract, or just literally anything. Now, shadow AI by itself adds an average of $670,000 to the cost of a data breach. And it's not even a hypothetical, this is a real number. So let me put this all together for you. Your team is likely using AI heavily. They're just not using yours. They're paying for it themselves on personal accounts, on their own devices that the boss can't see, and doing the same job they were going to do with the company's tool. Except now, your customer data is sitting in some chat history that nobody's monitoring. The resistance you're seeing isn't actually to AI, it's to the rollout. It's to being told what to do, no input, by people that they fully don't trust about a technology that scares them. Now, that is the real bottleneck. That is what your perfectly picked model runs into the second you try to deploy it. So, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, hey, now this is kind of depressing, what am I supposed to do about any of this? That's what the next section's about. The good news is that there is actually a pretty clean data on what works. So we know the model matters less than the rollout. Well, what does the rollout actually look like when it works? And this is where I want to bring in some really good research because Stanford's Digital Economy Lab published a study back in March called the Enterprise AI Playbook. They went deep on 51 successful AI deployments and they identified a clear pattern. So there are three numbers from that study that you need to know. Number one is that 73% of successful deployments started small on purpose. They were not company wide, and it was not every team gets it on Monday. It was one team, it was one workflow, and most of them started with 2 or 3 volunteers. They then picked a single high paying workflow, ran a 4-week pilot, and only expanded from there. Number two is that 63% framed these pilots explicitly as experiments, not as mandates, not as this is the future of work. It was more as, hey, let's try this for a month and see what we learn. And that is hugely different conversation with employees. Experiments have permission to fail, mandates do not. And lastly, which is the one I want you to dig into, is that the Stanford team found that across all 51 deployments, 80% of the transformation effort was about the people, the processes, and the culture. Only 20% was about the technology. So it's an 80-20 rule here. And that ratio is the opposite of how most companies budget for AI. Most companies spend 90% of their attention on which tool to buy and 10% on how to actually roll it out. So the successful deployments did the exact opposite. Well, what's actually happening inside that 4-week pilot? Now, there's a pattern here too, so let me walk you through it. Step one is to pick one high paying workflow. This isn't just a use AI more, this is something specific like drafting first replies to support tickets or generating monthly board updates, or maybe even summarizing weekly sales call transcripts. Something very specific. Step two is to pick 2 or 3 volunteers. People who really want to do this as well, not just trying to draft somebody. Volunteers self-select for low resistance, which means you bypass most of the rebellion problem just by who you pick. Step three is to ship a one-page AI policy before they even touch the tool. What data is allowed in it, what's not, what the scope is, what happens if there's a hallucination. If it's a 5-page policy, it's likely just going to sit in a drawer, whereas a 1-pager is going to actually get read. And step four is to have the volunteers run the workflow with AI for about 4 weeks and document what's worked and what didn't. And be honest here, include the ugly parts because that's going to give you the best possible outcome. And then step five, at the end of the 4 weeks, you've now got a real artifact. It could be a documented workflow that's been tested with real outcomes that other people on the team can copy. Now, that is something that you can genuinely scale, not the tool, the workflow. So there's a couple more things that I want to make sure I highlight. And the first one is to integrate AI inside the tools your team already lives in. Your CRM, your help desk, anything like that. It's not meant to be a separate dashboard that they have to remember to log into. The Stanford research and a separate Grant Thornton study both flag this. The moment AI lives somewhere new, adoption is going to crater. People don't add a new app to their day, they use what's already there. The second one is to measure outcomes, not time saved. This is the SMB specific failure pattern. If your only metric is how many hours did this save us, you'll get a great pilot report and zero real value. Save time does not automatically convert to dollars. People take the save time and do other things. Sometimes more work, sometimes less. The real question is hey, did the customer get a better answer? Did the proposal close at a higher rate? Or did the financial model catch the error that you used to miss? We want to focus on outcome metrics, not stopwatch metrics. And there is one more piece of data that I think reframes how you should think about all of this. Anthropic just put out a research report called the Economic Index, which tracks how people use Claude in the real world. Their finding is that experienced users are 3 times more successful at automating tasks than newcomers. And it's not because experienced users are smarter. It's because they've built the habit. They've learned which task AI is good at, which it's not, how to phrase requests, and when to push back. So the idea here is that adoption compounds. The team that started using AI 6 months ago is now in a different productivity tier than the team starting today. That's why the small pilot matters so much, because you're not just testing the tool, you're starting the compounding clock for your volunteers, and they become your internal champions when you scale to the rest of the team. Finally, it's about shadow AI. Don't ban shadow AI. I know that that's the instinct. The instinct is obviously, hey, lock down the personal accounts, force everyone onto the company tool. That fails. What works is to survey it, send a no judgment anonymous form to your team, and ask what AI tools they're already using, for what tasks, and on what data. You will learn an enormous amount. Then bring those tools into the official stack. Pay for the team subscription, secure the data, and build the workflow around what they already trust. Then you're able to convert shadow AI into your rollout instead of fighting it. That's the move that really nobody's making, and it works nearly every time that I've seen it. So, to wrap things up, here's what I want to leave you with. The AI race is not won by the company with the best model. It's won by the company whose people are actually using the model. The market shifted and the tool shifted, but the bottleneck moved with you. It's always the rollout. If this helped you think about AI differently, hit subscribe. I'm doing deep dives like this every single week, breaking down what's happening in AI in a way that makes sense for your work and your business. Also, drop a comment below and tell me which model your team uses or which one they refuse to use. And I'll see you in the next one.